Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. The Gorr World Boss Legend Guide is a little bit late, so you guys have likely already seen videos on how to complete the fight or possibly completed it yourself. So this video is just going to quickly cover over the basics of the fight, as well as give you some tips on how to better avoid dying and completing the phases much easier. First of all, this is rated as one of the toughest World Boss Legends since it's set at stage 4. So unless you have around maybe 10% Pierce and some of the best PvE characters, possibly even a T4, you won't be able to progress too far into the higher stages of the fight. The first mechanic that you're going to deal with is called the Shadow Zone. So regardless of what you do, the meter will fill up as time progresses, and in about 50 seconds, the arena will shrink down to basically a dot and then completely be covered in the shadow area, which if you stand in that, it doesn't really do anything besides lowering your Pierce, so you won't be able to deal much damage to Gorr when you're in that shadow zone. After those 50 seconds and the shadow area completely surrounds the map, Gorr will enter a temporary phase where you have to beat his shadow monsters in order to knock him out of this phase and be able to deal damage to his health. There are 5 different types of shadow monsters that spawn, each with their own type of attack and orientation on the map, which is denoted by a geometric shape right under them. One of them is the square shadow monster, which spawns 4 in each corner of the arena, and 2 of the shadow monsters that are across from one another will spawn a damage ring which pops up and then goes away, and then the alternating other 2 shadow monsters across from one another will do the same thing. You can simply avoid the damage that these shadow monsters do by standing close to them and sort of progressing in a circle either clockwise or counterclockwise to take them out. Another shadow monster is the circle one, which spawns in the center of the arena and will do damage to what appears like the entire arena, but the extreme edges of the first attack is the safe zone. After it does that attack, it'll do another one, but this time you need to stand close to it since that is the safe zone. The triangle shadow monster is yet another one, which usually spawns 2 at the top of the arena and 1 at the bottom, and will do a beam attack where the beam will kind of start chasing you to lock on, and you basically just have to keep moving till the beam is kind of locked into position, and then once you keep moving, you'll basically avoid the damage. When taking out this group, it's usually best to go for the 2 that are together if you have an AoE attack, since you can take them out at the same time. The X shadow monsters usually spawn across from one another, one on the left side and one on the right side near the middle of the arena, and they'll do a similar attack to the triangle one, but this time they won't really lock on, they'll just sweep from the top to the bottom at the same time. So when these 2 spawn, you usually want to immediately rush to one of them to take them out, and then just proceed to the bottom of the arena, since again the beam will start at the top and usually scan down to the bottom. After it does that, there is a safe zone near the bottom and edge of the bottom left of the arena, or bottom right, depending on which one you take out, and then you just take out the other one and you should be able to clear this one. The toughest shadow monster to deal with is the Pentagon one, because it spawns 5 in, you guessed it, a pentagon shape, and the safe zone is a little triangle cutout from a circle, which kind of looks like the Pac-Man shape. Because that triangle safe zone will randomly appear in different segments of the arena, you basically want to stand in the middle and then go attack whichever ones are in the safe zone, and then go back to the middle before going into the next safe zone to attack the ones there. If you're low on time though, you can go into that non-safe zone, because this attack isn't a penetrating one. As you can see, it's red colored as opposed to the purple, which means that if you go into iframes, you can potentially avoid some of the damage. Some things to keep in mind for this phase: as you can see in the bottom, there's a meter that shows you basically how much time you have left before this kind of temporary phase ends. And if you don't take out these shadow monsters in this period of time, you basically will lose the current active character that you have when that meter goes to 0. Your character will be time frozen and Gorr will come out of the shadows to one-shot them. However, if you are able to take down all of these shadow monsters in this period of time, Gorr will be stunned into place, which gives you an opening to deal a lot of damage. Another thing to note for this phase is that a total of 3 sets of shadow monsters will appear, and each one pops up every time a third of the meter goes by. So it doesn't really matter how quickly you take them out, every time that a third of the meter elapses, a new set of shadow monsters will appear, And even if you haven't taken out the previous ones, they will start stacking up on top of one another. In addition to that, every time a new set appears, the previous set can potentially move around the map. So basically, if you don't take these shadow monsters out fairly quickly, you will be overwhelmed by the attacks and end up running out of time and lose your character. By the way, if you didn't see it, here is what I meant when I said that these shadow monsters move when the next set appears. You can see the square one that was left jumped from the bottom left to the top left. Anyways, after you complete that temporary phase, once you get Gorr down to the 15 or 16 health bar mark, he'll go into another one of his mini phases where he channels the power of the Necro Sword and will start raining kind of circular damage attacks all over the arena. The attack pattern is random, so you basically just want to keep moving at this point, since if you stay in the same spot, you can have multiple of those attacks hit you, and although they might not do a ton of damage, they can put you in a bad position for the next sequence of attacks, which can potentially one-shot you. The next sequence that I'm talking about is that Gorr will float up from the center of the arena and do circular attacks in a line formation, moving out from him and usually chasing after you either in a clockwise or counterclockwise pattern. To avoid these attacks, you run in a circle either clockwise or counterclockwise, preferably close to him, but what I found works the most ideal for characters that even have slow movement is to run in sort of a triangle pattern, again either clockwise or counterclockwise, to basically go across from him and avoid the width of the circle. Keep in mind that if you feel your character is too slow or that you won't be able to do this part correctly, say if you're in a bad position, you can switch to another character the moment the first attack is cast, and that'll make the second character that you switch to take minimal damage while locking all three attacks in one location. After that sequence, Gorr will basically track your character and drop down on top of them, usually doing an X pattern attack, and if any of that hits you, your character will instantly die from a one-shot. I found that the best way to avoid this attack is to start moving away from him, so you're not right into the middle of the X when he jumps, but not too far to the edges of the map so you have enough room to move to the left or right once you see the pattern form. Most times you can just move away from him and you'll be safe, but sometimes if the line lands on top of you, you do have enough time to move out of it if you're further away from him. After you've got past that, you simply just have to keep doing damage to him to get him down to 0, but do keep in mind that that shadow meter will still be ticking and the arena will still be closing in, but if you've completed at least one of those shadow monster temporary phases, that meter will slow down very drastically. However, if you didn't go into that temporary phase because you took him down to 15 health bars very quickly, the meter will fill up just as quickly as it did when you started the fight. I'd say that a good benchmark of whether you can complete the stage is whether you can take down those 30 health bars or the first phase with about anywhere from 2 to 2.5 minutes remaining. If you do that, you'll have enough time for his second phase. In this one, the arena shrinks to about a medium-sized level, and you'll have to go through the same attack sequences that you experienced when he was at 15 health bars. Also keep in mind that for this second phase, that shadow meter is gone, since the arena is again locked to that medium size, but during this time, those shadow monsters will randomly spawn. Every, I would say, 20 to 30 seconds, one of those sets will appear while you're fighting Gorr. The best advice I can give for this phase is to basically target the shadow monsters as quickly as you can, but also to kind of keep an eye out on what sequence of attacks Gorr is currently in. He usually cycles through them, and you'll see what those are in this next part of the video. The attack patterns that Gorr have are actually pretty straightforward and predictable. He usually has about 1 to 3 attacks per set, and he has about 2 or 3 sets in his kind of kit of skills that he does. Off the start, he'll usually do a red line attack followed by a circular purple AoE attack, which you can't do any damage during that circular AoE attack, and you want to avoid because it does a lot of damage to you. Another set of attacks that he does is a cone, a line, and circle attack. So he'll start off by doing a cone attack, which doesn't really do too much damage, but CCs you in place for the higher damage skills that he does afterwards, which are a purple line attack, followed by a circular attack where he drops down on you. These are the two attacks that you want to avoid because, like I said, they deal a lot of damage. The cone attack might be a little bit tricky to dodge since it happens very quickly, but if you're close to him, just move towards him. Otherwise, if you are a little bit away, then just move away from him. Even if you get hit, it's not too big a deal because it doesn't deal too much damage. One of the other attacks that he has is kind of a scatter shot attack that comes out in a kind of cone pattern, which will go out and then come back to him, and you basically just stand in between the gaps to avoid that damage. You'll know when he does this because he'll usually jump back a bit before he does the attack. From there, he can do some auto attacks if you're close to him, but the last main attack that he has is a purple circle line attack, which is very similar to the ones you see at the 15 health bar mark and when you start off the second phase. You'll typically see this after he does that kind of scattershot attack, but it can potentially appear at any point from those other set of attacks that I mentioned. Generally speaking, the attacks that have a red color on them don't do too much damage, but are more so there to lock you down for the purple attacks to hit you, which are the ones that do a substantial amount of damage and can potentially kill you when you're at the higher stages. So when fighting Gorr in that second phase and the shadow demons pop up and it gets kind of chaotic, just keep in mind where he is in his kind of attack sets or sequences, since you can basically hit him when you see the red attacks, but you have to keep in mind that he'll usually follow up with the purples right after, so you have to start dodging after that point. Hopefully this video helped you out. I try to be as thorough as I can without making it too long or complicated, so if it did help you, please consider liking and subscribing and sharing the video with other people since it might help them as well. As I mentioned earlier in the video, Gorr is meant to be the toughest world boss. So once you progress to some of the higher stages, you might not be able to cut it even with strong PvE-centered T3 characters, and will likely have to resort to using T4 characters. Despite this though, if you have anywhere from 5 to 10 pierce and maybe 50% or more total damage, you should be able to complete stage 1 of Gorr and be able to get the tokens for the current event going on, as well as hopefully unlock the character in the future once he gets released. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments down below and I'll try to answer them as soon as I can. And as always, I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch these, but the video is now over.